Now that the backend API for filtering and pagination are working, let's move to the front end and then integrate that. So let's look at the flow on the front end. We are going to implement 4 things. The first one is going to be searching of a post. Second one is going to be filtering by category. And then third, we need to clear the filtering. And then lastly, we will implement the pagination. So let's begin with the filtering by category. This means that when a user clicks on any of these categories, we want to filter out all posts that belongs to this category. So let's get back to code. And we are going to do it on the post list component over here. So back to the SRC component and then the post component, we are going to manage all the states the same way we did on the backend. These are the states that we are going to implement. That is question mark, title, and if you want to incorporate the category, it's going to be AND operator and then pass in the category, and let's say it is equal to this ID, and we can also add the page number as page equal to 1, and then the limit, let's say, is equal to 10. This is what we call the query strings. So in React, we are going to represent these ones as state. So we need to manage all these states. So the whole logic is that we need to find a way to pass this data from the front end to the back end. That's all what we are going to do. So now back here, we are going to have a state, and I will say filtering state. And the first state is going to be the filters. So I'm going to have internal state as this, and I will say filters, and then set filters. And it is equal to useState, and then by default it's going to be an empty object. And the next one is going to be the search term. So here I will say search term, and then set search term. And for this, we're going to use empty string, and then the page number. And here I will say page, and then set page. And then by default, we're going to use page number 1. So we are done with the internal state for our queries and pagination and set term. So next step is that we need to create the handlers. So let's see the handlers that we are going to create. Handle clear filters handler. Alright, so let's begin with the category filter. Over here, we are going to create a function called handle category filter. For the category handle filter, it needs the ID of the category, but not the name. So it means that when a user clicks on this category, we have to take the ID of this, but not the actual text. So this function will take in the category ID, supposed to be handle category. Then inside, we are going to update the filters by passing in an object and spread all the filters. And then we want to update the category. So in case you don't have category in the filters, it's going to be added to the filters. So here as category, and then we will assign to the category ID. And then we have to set the page to page number 1 as set page as 1. And next step is that we need to refetch the request by using what is called refetch. So it means that we need to bring the use query here before the filtering handler because we will need this function from the use query. Awesome. So now we are done with the handle category filter. How are we going to use it? We are going to pass it as a prop to the post category component, in this case this one. So it means that we are going to call this function inside the post category component. So here, let me uncomment that, and I used what is called onCategorySelect and pass in the handler as that. For this one, you can name it whatever you want. So now inside the post category, we have access to this handler. So let's get back to the post category, in this case, this one. And here we are destructuring it as that. So let me remove this console log. And down here, this is where we are going to call it, which is this. That is onClick handler. So here we pass in the handler. And remember, this function takes in the ID of the category. Now with this one, we are done with the handle category filter, in this case this one. Next step is that we need to find a way to pass these filters to the request here, to the API or to our backend. And to achieve this, we're going to modify this one a little bit, in this case this use query. And here we go, we're going to pass in comma here and then the object, and over here we're going to specify the filters, and then the next one is going to be the page. It means that we are passing these values to this API. So inside the fetch or post API, we have access to these filters as an argument. Now save it and let's get back to the API for the fetching of all posts, in this case this one. And this is the API for fetching all posts. Here we have access to the what is called filters as that. So if I lock the filters here, now let's see the console. Let's open it and let me put it below it as that. Awesome. And let me refresh it. Let me remove these console logs on line number 43 on post list component, which is line number, remove this. Now when I click on these ones, as you can see, we have the filters here inside our API in the use query. As you can see, this is what we specified. But as soon as I click on any of these, for example this one, as you can see, we got the query here as query, and we have the filters as category and page number 1. At this point, we need to find a way to take these filters and pass to the API. If you look at the structure for this data, to get the actual properties for the category and page, unless we use array and use the index to get the right properties. Because of that, we can modify the use query to pass all the properties as an object. So back to the code. That is the fetching of all posts, which is up here. The way we are calling this function, we're going to pass it to a function called anonymous function as that. And then we call it as that. So inside here, we can pass in the filtering. So here, we're going to spread all the filters and then add these properties to it. Remember, we will need the title because at the back end, that is what we implemented. Let me show you. Inside the post and post controller for fetching, we are using the title here, but on the post, it is called description. All right, so let's go ahead and then pass that. So title here is going to be our search term. At the moment, we don't have the input to search, but we will get there very soon. And also pass in the page and then the limit. For the limit, we are going to use hard coding figure of 10. With this one, if I save it, and as you can see, now we have something different. We got the actual object for the queries. Awesome. So we can go ahead and then destructure that. So at this point, we have the queries here inside our API on the front end, which is this. Now, how are we going to pass this data to the backend to have something like this, or inside the controller to have access to something like this. And Axios make it easy for us to do that. So here, as the second argument to the base URL, we're going to pass in an object and then specify what is called params. This params is like this one on the backend, which is this one. So in the controller, we will have access on it as rec.params. So here we can even destructure the properties, or I can assign to it as the filters. Awesome. So now let's try out. Let me refresh it and click on web security. Now, as you can see, it worked. It has filtered out all the posts by the web security. If I click on the HTML, as you can see, we got that.